Welcome to Tuesday's lesson. Before we begin, I just want to go through and tell you that you do have two assignments that I want you to work on tonight. They are IXL 7.AA.7 and IXL 7.AA.10. Okay, they're linked to the Google Classroom assignment, and they are both for a score of 85 or more, or 30 minutes. Now, you know that this means, if you're doing the math, that you've had 6 assignments this week, and usually you have 4. What I have done is I've added these 6 assignments for a total of 60 points, and I've reduced the percentage of your quiz this week. So instead of worth 40 points, your quiz this week will be worth 20. All right, so it will all even out. Just consider this, basically, the extra assignments as doing more toward your grade for your quiz. All right. Today we're going to start by finding the volume of, or we're going to do volume of prisms and cylinders, but we're going to start with something that you went over yesterday, which was classifying three-dimensional shapes. So hopefully, looking at these shapes, you'll know right away that this is a cone. Okay, and then the rest of the shapes, I want you to start by understanding that this shape and this shape, first of all, you should know that these are prisms. And these shapes, I hope that you recognize, are pyramids. So first you figure out prism or pyramid, and then what you have to do is you have to identify the base, and whatever shape the base is going to be that type of shape. So this is the base of this prism. Now remember, prisms have 2 bases. If I looked at the bottom under here, it would have the same shape as that, and both of them are octagons. So this would be an octagonal prism. And this is the base of this pyramid, which is also an octagon. So this would be an octagonal pyramid. Now this prism, the base is a hexagon. So this would be a hexagonal pyramid, prism rather. And this pyramid, we know that it's 4-sided. It may be a square, it may not be. To be safe, we're just going to call this a rectangular pyramid. Okay? And that's how we name our shapes. Now, you should have remembered from last year, but every shape has its own area formula, and that's going to be really important for volume. So just to go over the shapes and their area formulas, a rectangle has an area formula of length times width. And again, that's what a rectangle would look like. Remember, opposite sides parallel and even, and all sides are 90-degree angles. A square is a type of rectangle, but we need less information since all the sides are the same. So we say side squared, because if we did length times width and the length and the width are the same, that means that that means you can square it. For a triangle, we use the area formula of half times base times height. And the base can be any side, but the height has to be 90 degrees, has to be the length from the base 90 degrees to the highest point. Okay, so this would be the height. Remember, this is not the height and this is not the height. This would be the height of our triangle. And if we had an obtuse triangle, something like this, where we obviously couldn't measure, what we're going to do is we're going to go off to the side, and this right here is going to be the height, and this would be the base. A parallelogram is base times height. And again, just like a triangle, the height of a parallelogram is going to be 90 degrees from base to base. So this would be the height. I'm going to skip a trapezoid for a second. A circle is going to be pi times the radius squared. And remember that the radius of a circle is from the middle to the outside, okay? So that's the radius. So we're going to, if you're given the whole thing, which is a diameter, you're going to chop it in half to find the radius, okay? So that's the first thing. And also, from here on out, for the rest of this school year, you're going to use the number 3.14 for pi, only because different calculators have different pi equations. We're just going to keep it safe and simple and use 3.14 for pi. And back to the trapezoid. So the trapezoid, first let's go over what a trapezoid looks like. And a trapezoid has exactly one pair of parallel lines, parallel sides. And we notice that this and this have different measurements. So the trapezoid, these are the bases, and so it has two different bases. So we can call this base 1, and we can call this base 2. And then, just like every other shape, the 90 degrees from one base to the next would be the height. Okay, so what we're going to say here is the area formula is area equals half B1 plus B2 times H. And a lot of students get really confused with this, but they shouldn't, because it's really simple when you think about it this way. If you did this base times height, it wouldn't be big enough because this base is too small. If you did this base times height, it would be too big because this base is too long. So, to be fair, what you're going to do is you're going to average the bases. And anytime you average two numbers, you add the two numbers together and you divide by 2, or multiplying by half is the same thing. Okay? So all you have to do is really the average of the bases times the height, and that will give you the area of your trapezoid. The reason why we're going through these is because we need these for volume. Okay? So here, this is a triangle, so we're going to do half times base times height. This is our base, this is our height, so we're going to say the area is half times 14 times 5. You don't have to do it in this order. You could do half of 5 times 14. You could do half of 14 times 5. You could do 14 times 5 and then do half of that. Doesn't matter what order you do it in. In this case, half of 14 is easy because half of 14 is 7. And then 7 times 5 is 35. So the area is 35. So we would write 35 meters squared. Moving on, we have a trapezoid. Remember, the formula is area equals half times B1 plus B2 times H. Or we can say, let's average 39 and 17. In order to average 39 and 17, you'd do 39 plus 17, which equals 56. And then half of 56 is 28. So the average of the bases is 28. And then if we multiply that by the height of 16, we get an answer of 448. And then the label is feet squared, because area is always squared. Circles, again, all circles, area equals pi r squared. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. Okay? So this would be area equals 3.14 times, this is the radius, 5 squared. You do 5 squared first, which is 25. And 3.14 times 25 is 78.5. And the label would be inches squared. Here, area equals pi r squared. We don't have a different formula for diameter, even though they gave us a diameter. But diameter is all the way across the circle. Radius is halfway across the circle. So if it's 20 yards all the way across the circle, then it must be 10 yards half. So that's what we're going to use for our radius. 10 squared is 100, and 100 times 3.14 is 314. Label yards squared. All right, so on to volume of prisms and cylinders. Prisms and cylinders, I already talked about the base, right? So the height of any type of prism or cylinder is going to be the length from one base to the other base. Remember, prisms and cylinders always have two congruent and parallel bases. So for all volume of prisms and cylinders, it's the volume equals the area of the base times the height of the prism or cylinder. So that's why we just went over all of those area formulas. All you're going to do is find the area of your base using whatever area formula is the shape of your base, and you're going to multiply by the height of your prism or cylinder, or the distance from one base to the next. So here, this shape right here, this is a triangular prism, because here's a base, it's a triangle, here's a base, it's another triangle. That means that the distance between your bases, this is going to be your height of your prism. And we're going to have to find the area of this triangle. So volume equals base times height. But in this case, the area of this base, since it's a triangle, is half times the base of the triangle times the height. And now we're just looking at this triangle. So it's going to be half times 7 times 6.3. And that winds up giving me an area of 22.05. So that's what this is. So we're going to take that, V equals base times height. So we know it's 22.05 is the area of the base. And the height of my prism is 21. And we're going to multiply them, and we get that the volume equals 463.1 centimeters, and volume is always units cubed. Okay? The next shape is a rectangular prism, which means the base is a rectangle. Well, area of a rectangle is length times width. So really, that's where we get the formula, length times width times height, because the base is length times width, the area of the base, and then we add the height in. So we can, anytime you have a rectangular prism, you can do volume equals length times width times height. This only works for rectangular prisms. So we do 3 times 4 times 8, doesn't matter what order, you get 96 inches cubed. And then finally, we have a cylinder, and the volume equals the area of the base times the height. Well, the base of a cylinder is a circle, so we're going to use pi r squared. So we're going to use 3.14 times here, the radius is 5 squared. We already absolutely did this one where we had this, and we wound up getting 78.5. So that's the area of the base. We multiply that by the height, which is 16. Even though it's on its side, the height represents the distance from one base to the next. So we do volume equals 78.5 times 16. And 78.5 times 16 equals 1,256. And then, of course, you give it a label. This was in meters, so it's meters cubed. And that is your volume. All right? Good luck with these two assignments. Don't forget to do them. And I will see you live for tomorrow's lesson. See you tomorrow.